Welcome to this week's MTD podcast. Today we discuss complete CNC machining optimization with verification solutions and prove out off the machine, plus so much more with CGTech. I'm Giovanni Albanese, hosting today's show, a passionate engineer and a proud member of the MTD team. I'm joined by three special guests. Firstly, we have the pleasure to be joined by Gavin Powell, Technical Director for CGTech. It's safe to say that Gavin's had an illustrious career in engineering with over 30 years of experience working at some iconic companies such as British Aerospace PLC, Renishaw, BAE Systems, and now CGTech. I'm looking forward to find out a lot more during this podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Gavin.
Thank you, Gio. Good to be here.
It's good to have you here, so thank you very much. Welcome. We also have the pleasure to be joined by Gavin Bridger, or otherwise known as Gavin B, a senior technical support engineer at CGTech, and just like your colleague, with over 30 years experience. And I can see that you've worked at some great manufacturing businesses too, such as Magellan Aerospace and Airbus. Welcome, Gavin.
Good afternoon, Gio.
And last but not least, we have our very own Mark Deadman, again with 30 years plus experience in the machine tool and UK manufacturing sectors, launching magazines in areas such as aerospace, and for the last 6 years, a dedicated director at MTDCNC. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Gia. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, and really looking forward to this podcast. I'm glad I've got the intro out of the way, so that's a good start.
Well, I'm rubbing shoulders with some guys who've got as much experience, if not more than me, which makes a change.
Yeah, we were saying before the podcast, a combined experience. I've had nearly around 27 years experience now, so we've got about over 120 years experience in the engineering industry between us, which is
scary,
yeah. Very
years.
Scary, but I can't wait for this podcast. I want to find out a little bit about you guys first, and we've got a lot to find out about and discover in this podcast about your products and solutions, but before we start, let's start at the beginning. So, Gavin, can you just tell us a little bit about you, why you got into engineering, and a little bit about your journey, and now where you are now at CGTech?
Thank you, Gio. I did an apprenticeship like many others, and many are doing again these days, which is great to see. Started at British Aerospace as a general apprentice, and I did my time in the various sections in the factory there. Enjoyed machining most, surprise, and they had CNCs even in the early 80s. They had a few CNCs there, so I found myself working on CNC machines, at a fairly early, young age.
What were they? What were the brands?
They had Wadkin V510s and H4s, some Kearney Trekker Marwin with Siemens controls, they had Maxi Traces. Good variety of things.
Never heard of any of them.
They're before your time,
Yeah,
Gio,
they were good quality though.
Yeah, there were some good machines there. It was a good factory. So I enjoyed my time as apprentice, studying at Kingston College.
And why did you get into engineering?
I enjoyed engineering subjects at school. So at school we had lathes and mills, and I enjoyed that side of things. Also, maths to a lesser degree, but still enjoyed that side. You had to do something.
Gavin B shaking his head there.
You imagine though, Gavin, that you look at these academies now, and these young learners are really learning every aspect from a 5-axis machine tool down, let's say, down to software and metrology, where basically they can walk away from that college once they pass it, say, and hit the floor running. Very different to how you did it, and I know you have as well, Gio, who's been an apprentice.
I don't know that it is that much different. It's branded differently and it's much more in your face. But actually the training that we received back then is probably not so different. We have an apprentice now with CGTech Limited since September last year. He's the first CGTech apprentice, and he's in his first year at college, off the job training at college. And I've been and visited the college, and actually it doesn't look so different. They still have Bridgeport machines.
Do they still have handles?
They still have handles, yeah. So, and the assignments that he's got to do, they're newer and they're making different things that are perhaps more relevant today, but a lot of it is very similar.
Yeah, I think it's you've got to start, on manual machinery and learn your trade. In my opinion, 100%. Now, Gavin B, we're going to refer to you during this podcast as Gavin B.
That's fine.
We've got two Gavins today. Now, Gavin, tell us a little bit about your background, why you got into engineering. You've again, as mentioned in the introduction, you've worked at some fantastic companies.
I'd like to think I have. Yeah, stayed my time. I got involved very young. I wanted to join the RAF and become an engineer on aircraft, but I was too young. So I joined a YTS scheme. I joined a local engineering company that was just down the road from me, quite a large one, Muirhead Vactric. And I just went there for 4 weeks of work experience, and they managed to take me on. So I got an apprenticeship, if you like, through the back door. And I was only 15 when I left school. So I started my apprenticeship when I was 16. And I went into the tool room, which was the place where you wanted to be. Everyone else, CNC machines, grinders, auto setters. I actually got into the tool room, which was the place to be. So I got into the tool room, and I was just interested in engineering from day one. I like to know how things work, and I love Lego. I love building stuff. I like taking things apart, not necessarily being able to put them together again, which is why I know this guy. So it's like, Gav, I've taken this apart, help me out. So yeah, and I it's that engineering brain, and I just enjoyed it. I loved it. And we had a couple of CNC machines. We had a Bridgeport milling machine, 3-axis, and we had a Megit lathe. And nobody else wanted to touch it. Being young, I want to get my hands in, I'll learn it. And I taught myself how to use the machines. And then finished my apprenticeship. And of course, money calls, doesn't it? So I then went and joined what was part of the Trim Group, which was DIAC down in Croydon, which then became Magellan Structures. So I stayed there. I worked on the shop floor, went up into engineering, turned into CAM programmer, etc., and things moved on. And that's where Gav and I know each other from, because Gav joined DIAC then back in the days, Trim Engineering Group. So we've known each other over 30 years. So, and we've kept in touch.
Great background. Yeah, great back. I'm not going to ask why you left school at 15, by the way. I'm not going to go. My birthday was at the end of August, and we left school in June. I should have been in the year after, but... So you've had an extra year, really?
Not really. I was too young to leave school when I left school, so I did rubbish at school.
That's why they took pity on you, put you in a tool room.
That's probably why, actually, yeah. My boss was terrible, but I know why he was terrible now. Because he drove me to be better. Because he used to treat me terribly. Everything I did was never, ever right. But he actually taught me that everything, you can always go to that step and get perfection.
Yeah.
And when he retired, he actually called me into the office before he retired, and he said, "You've actually turned out to be one of the best engineers, because most of them just leave because they hate me." He said, "But you've got a really thick skin, and if I tell you something, you'll go and do it rather than just bitch and moan at me about not being, how nasty I am at you." He said, "But, what you're turning out now is where I want you to be." He said, you've been one of my best apprentices the whole of my career. And I took that and I was like, I hated you for 5 years. And now we have this conversation and I love you and you're leaving. So,
Great story.
There you go.
So let's move on to your product and your company, CGTech and VERICUT. Mm-hmm. For our audience and listeners out there that may not be familiar with your complete solutions and portfolio of solutions and products, can you kind of tell us about your product and the company?
So our products are for CNC simulation. We're not a CAD-CAM company as such, although we live in the CAD-CAM arena. But we simulate NC programs, really. That's our main product. We have a couple of other products around the composite area. So for programming, actually, of composite layout machines and simulation of composite layout machines. But our core product, VERICUT, is for simulation of CNC programs.
And why VERICUT? Why would an end user come to you to have your products?
Well, we'd like to see that we're the industry leader. You know, we've been around since 1988. We've been doing this stuff for a long, long time.
But why would they come to you? What solution would they get? You know, what problems would they have for you to solve?
Prove out, post-process issues, reducing the amount of collisions that you have on the machine with any particular tooling, any fixturing. You know, we do exactly what we say we do on the tin. We verify the cut on the machine.
I mean, I've known you guys for a long time, and you know, one thing I've always seen with your marketing has always been simulation software. But over the years, it's drifted, and obviously you've brought in other aspects like force,
yes,
which is you know yet again another sort of different tooling path, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, and we've had optimization as a product for a very long time. So OptiPath has been a CGTech product for probably 25 plus years now. It's hard to remember when it came along. And Force is the next step up from that. So yeah, that's fairly recent, but it's probably 5 or 6 years now.
Let's start with Force then. Is it in the name? Is it kind of to kind of verify the forces that are being applied on the component, and for you to be able to adjust the feeds and speeds from that?
Applied to the tool at any given point during the cut.
So can you explain in more detail, please?
Yeah, so what we do is we basically produce a contact map on the tool, on the material. So we know at any given point along that contact map between the tool and the material what the amount of force against that tool is in slices. So we also measure chip thickness. So we can optimize, so we basically change the feed rate during the process, during the cut from A to B. We can change the feed rate depending on the chip thickness and the amount of force that is applied to that tool at any given point along that tool path.
And where would the work holding come into play with this solution?
It doesn't.
So is it based on the assumption that the component is being held securely?
Not with a piece of blue tack or some sellotape on a machine
So it needs
table.
to be, and then once you've made that assumption, and we know that the component is being made securely, with being able to kind of analyse the forces that are being applied and increase your feeds and speeds, effectively is that giving you shorter cycle times?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and we've seen gains especially in harder materials of 30, 40, 50%.
But that's not always, I mean, I always say that that's an added benefit of Force. The benefit from Force is tool life and machine protection.
I was going to say that actually, Gavin B, because we held up a live event with you guys at SECO not so long ago, which is on our YouTube channel, which basically sort of breaks down really what Force actually does. And we've done some fantastic videos, simulation against real machining cutting, where you can not only can you see the speed, but the tool life, what it can actually. And this is on really hard materials like titanium as well. Yep. They're really good videos, actually. So if you want to know a little bit more visually, go to our YouTube channel.
And staying on the theme of Force, because this is really interesting, and you mentioned tool life, it's the biggest consumable within a workshop, really.
Exactly.
And there's massive savings to be had with tool life, especially like Mark alluded to, cutting them hard materials. You know, you can really save a lot of money. What kind of extended tool life would you be looking to get? And also, can you go into a little bit more detail in regards to machine protection as well? Is that kind of protecting your spindle?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, as for tool life, I couldn't tell you because
every application is different.
Everything is individual. But yeah, spindles, I mean, we know some customers, they'll have spare spindles sitting on the shelf that's 60 to 80,000 pounds tied up with something sitting on the shelf. Whereas with us protecting that, we're saving them that money. They're not having to replace. And also you look at lost production. How long does it take to change a spindle? On some of these complex machines, it can take a long time, and they're down on production as well as 60 to 80,000 pounds on a spindle.
Yeah, it's. I can see the benefits instantaneously now. Like, you know, combining like Force with some of your other products such as digital twin. We haven't touched on digital twin yet. Can you firstly just explain the digital twin before we go into it in a little bit more detail? But, you know, explain how it all works and how you can kind of encompass all of your products to get the very best solution.
So a digital twin is a digital representation of a physical process. is probably the term that is what Wikipedia says, etc. I mean, with our with VERICUT, we are replicating what's happening on the machine tool, of course, in faster time. We don't want to see VERICUT running at the same speed of the machine. Nobody would want that. We want to see it run faster, or not even see it at all. That's really a difference between our understanding of the term digital twin and some of the others that you can read if you were to Google the term.
You must be working very closely with the OEMs and the machine tool manufacturers to make this a success. How do you analyse the parameters of the machine tool and to get that exact digital representation? How does that work?
We can extract the parameters out of the machine. So we take the parameter file out of the machine, and we have internal readers that extract the data.
Well, like the G code, or
No. Well, it's like a series of variable settings. So we take those variable settings straight out of the machine, and then when you look at our control files, they're all set up based on if this variable is equal this, then the machine's going to behave in this direction, or rotate in this direction, that direction. It's going to do this, it's going to do that. So we have the ability. I think there's all of them apart from not even a handful, is there? I mean, Siemens, Heidenhain, Fanuc are the three top ones, Akuma. So we can take all of those parameter files.
Mazak as well.
Mazak, take them out of the machine, put them through our readers. It then creates a file that we use within VERICUT on the control side of things on how the machine is actually going to behave.
So it's a big collaboration with the OEMs.
Not directly.
No.
The customer, the end customer can get that file.
Yeah.
What's been interesting on the journey of seeing CGTech and obviously VERICUT software is that you've always been able to work with every engineer,
Yes.
every machine tool, and adapt around whatever software that they're working with. I don't know of any other companies which sell your products that can actually offer all of that. I think it's a bit of a unique selling point.
Yeah, I know I do. And I think what's unique about us is anything that we can do as tech engineers for CGTech, anyone else, end user, can do as well. We don't hide anything. Everything is open for the end user to do. So if they want to build their own machines and their own controls, they can. It's just all comes down to knowledge. That's all it is. If you know how to do it, then there's nothing to stop you. Whereas I think on some of the other software, it's hidden. It's black box, what we call black box, but everything we do is just purely open.
So you mentioned verification. This is obviously very important, to guarantee that there's no collisions, or as pretty much close as guarantee there's not going to be any collisions, dependent on how the setters set the machine tool. So you mentioned, Gavin, CAM at the beginning of this podcast, and you're a verification company, not a CAM company. For potential viewers or listeners to this podcast, can you explain in detail why you choose one or the other, and what are the main advantages of using CGTech for the verification?
So most people would already have a CAM solution. You do find people now changing CAM systems. That's always been the case. People have changed CAM systems. We sit outside of that, really. You wouldn't choose probably VERICUT over a CAM system unless maybe you were 100% programming on the shop floor. And that's not as unusual as people may think. It still does happen that there's people just programming on machines, in which case VERICUT's still useful for those people. They don't have to have a CAM system.
Yeah, I think that the advantages are massive, really. I can remember when I used to program on the duckboard. If I had this kind of solution available back then, it would have made my life a hell of a lot easier. Looking at some of the other solutions and some of the things I'm trying to think of really is, with automation coming into play now, do you have any kind of solutions that would accommodate for automation? In regards to verification, if the robots...
I could answer that one. I think your software enhances automation, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's where you basically, let's say you've got this sort of an older-fashioned engineering company that are programming each job on each separate machine, where you can get a very good CAM software, bring it together, and actually then run VERICUT alongside it. So therefore, it's proving everything out. And obviously, if you're automating that as well, it's saving huge amounts of time and money, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a batch processing option in VERICUT that comes as standard. It's always been there. And in fact, when I started to use VERICUT in about 1989, all you could do was batch process. The graphics were so slow, you wouldn't watch them. All you could do was batch process. And of course, things have changed a lot since then. We're now on PCs where blink and you miss most simulations. And that's something that people forget, that you don't actually need to watch it. Why would you want to watch something? You just wait for the results. And people have done great implementations of automation of batch processing VERICUT where they've had the system send them an email, for instance, and the email's coloured red or green. Is it good? Is it bad? And only if it's red will they actually go and investigate using VERICUT as the application.
I suppose in a way, we are hitting a skill shortage in the UK and Ireland, and I think software like yours, it de-skills it in a way. Which, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? But it protects the machine tool, it protects the tooling, it protects the company at the end of the day, doesn't it? And are you seeing at the moment more of an increase for your software, maybe because the shortage is out there?
It could well be. I mean, it gives you that level of, once you've got to know the software and it works, you get a level of confidence that you can 95% of the time take out the human intervention of, oops, I've set the tooling wrong, etc. But the guy should just be able to press the button and watch it run.
Gavin,
or walk away.
Or walk away, turn the lights out and go home.
You mentioned to me prior to this podcast, you've had a lot of new business during COVID.
Yeah.
Why are people kind of starting to embrace it now and not before? And how easy is it for them to pick up? Have they kind of seen the light? Have they kind of had to kind of look for ways to improve their processes? And is this a big part of that?
I think it's not being able to get into the factories to see the machines running, because most of the factories that we've been involved with only have production staff, guys running the machines. Everybody that's in the office base and programming offline, they're at home. So they don't get to come into the factory and maybe either run the prove out or stand by the operator and watch them proving out. Now they can do it at home. So people are seeing the benefit of this remote being able to simulate something, not actually being there. That's...
I suppose when you break down a machine tools to a certain extent, obviously VERICUT, as I've known, is very much the simulation, but it's really looking at the machine tool, how it moves, like the kinematics, isn't it? And it gives that operator or the guys that are programming it that you're not going to chuck that spindle into the workpiece, because obviously we know how costly that can be.
Very.
We've all done it. In the past. We've both worked at companies that didn't have VERICUT and seen crashes. It's one of those things, but it's the confidence when you do have it that you're not going to get that phone call maybe on a weekend or something where they're proving out a job at the weekend or late at night or early in the morning. You're not going to get that phone call. Oh, something bad's happened. Can you come in and sort this out, please? Help.
It's installing confidence into and especially now with the processes becoming more and more complex, and the components becoming more complex, the machine tools becoming more complex. I suppose it's just giving that confidence.
We've heard stories where operators won't actually run a part if it's not been through VERICUT. They'll turn around to the NC program and say, if it hasn't been through VERICUT, I'm not running it. Go back, run it, check it, and then I would. They'll put it on the machine. You do get that.
That's a big statement. That's great.
It's huge.
Myself and Gio, we went to a company that I won't name, but they've invested very heavily with Grob.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what they were making was something as an end product that they manufacture. But they were letting their apprentices actually work on those machines. Where I've been at companies where, the let's say older engineers don't want to get on the new stuff because they don't know it, don't want to touch it. Mm-hmm. But they could if they had VERICUT.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Degree of confidence. We have reviewer application that's a standalone application that takes your VERICUT file results, if you like, and can be used on an application that's free. No charge for that. People use that on the shop floor. so that if they're doing a prove out in the middle of the night and they're not sure what's going to happen, they've got a digital twin, if you like, there next to the machine that's been done in VERICUT. They can see exactly what's going to happen.
That's brilliant. I think that it's going along the road that in years to come, I can see it being virtual factories. So everything's done. Doesn't even have to be. People don't even have to be in the factory.
That's where we're heading.
Yeah.
That's where we're
Do you
heading.
think?
Yeah, that's where we're heading.
Yeah, I mean, you must see as well many shops where it's not one person to a machine, and it hasn't been that way for a long time. You know, sometimes three or four people, three or four machines per person. Is common.
But it's a little bit like automation in this country. You know, a lot of engineers would actually think, well, actually, I'm going to lose my job. But it actually creates jobs in other areas.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're saying with your software. If you're programming 3 machines and you can actually, you know, put it through your CAM system with VERICUT effectively, you can say, well, right, that's loaded. I'll go and work somewhere else.
You can go and get on with something else. That's right.
Yeah.
And what about the training and support and the service?
So we think we have the best support in the business, and we pride ourselves on our support. If you call us up, you'll get a real person during working hours. You won't get an automation thing. You'll get a ticket number eventually, because everything's logged on a CRM system which generates ticket numbers. But you'll get a real person who will know how to install the software, how to help you out live. We have training courses, and of course a lot of those have been virtual in the last year or so, and they've been well accepted, the training courses. You know, we've used good software to deliver those courses, and in fact our first actual training class is next month. So we've done some inside customers, you know, private training, if you like, for customers on their sites, but our first standard class is in June, so that's going to be interesting to see how that goes.
Just a thought here. I mean, obviously VERICUT has been around since 1988, I think you said.
Correct.
Okay, based over in California. So, am I right in thinking that any problem that you've got, you can go into the cloud database of every problem that VERICUT's ever had with a customer, and actually sort of, oh, well, we've had that, you know, we can go into that case study.
That's how our database works, yeah. We're all linked together. We can't get to see everybody else's in other countries because we don't have the permissions. Not all of us have permissions, but we can go across the knowledge base of the whole of the CGTech world and pull it all together. So, yeah, we've got a fantastic portal that we can just search through data. But I think between the two of us, there's not a lot that we haven't seen.
Yeah.
And what's the biggest change over the 30 years that you have seen?
Grey hair. or eyesight.
Or less hair. So
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think I'd like to think about that for a minute. I don't see there's been a massive change really in our core customer base. We probably go to more smaller factories than we did in 20 years ago when I started. But we did have customers, you know, in one-man bands and things like that back then. So, yeah, it's not a straightforward answer.
But you're seeing a lot more business at smaller engineering companies that you ever did in the past. Is that safe to say?
I think that is probably safe to say, yeah.
Which is brilliant, really,
Yeah.
I think.
yeah, but if you think about Gio, I mean, we go, you know, we're on the road every day, not, you know, as in the MTDCNC team, and when you let's say visit a facility that probably doesn't look a very nice facility, and suddenly you've got like £1 million worth of machine tools with automation. They're the companies that really need to be investing in your software.
Yeah.
Because these machines, you know, they
need protecting.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised how many people say, well, what do I get for my money? You tell them what they get and they go, well, hold on a minute, that's a lot of money. It's like, how much did your machine tool cost? Well, it's over 1.2 million. Well, then the cost of that is not a lot when you compare it to protecting your machine.
How much would it cost to actually get that spindle repaired?
Exactly. And then they go, oh, and then you hear a little penny drop, and it's like, actually, that's not too much.
Effectively, you're taking a risk without your solution.
Of course, yeah.
You have, that's
You're taking a risk.
you are.
Well, one thing it'd be great to tell the listeners. when you've got your technical aspects, you've got the might of Silicon Valley behind you as well, and all their knowledge. How does it actually work? So if a company doesn't have, let's say, simulation software, or they're interested in force or the composite elements effectively, how does it work from a sales process? What do you do? Do you actually offer them a demo? Not you personally, but the sales guys within?
Yeah. So salespeople would generally do a demo, and of course a lot of that has been web-based over the last year, but more and more actual visits now. People have a demo. They might have a trial license for a while. They might come on training even before purchase, possibly, to see whether it's for them.
And can you give us an example of some real good success stories that you've took on board recently?
You don't necessarily have to say who it is.
You don't have to mention names. Don't start naming names, do we?
No. We have recently got back a customer that we had probably 15 years ago, and they had to leave us for political reasons, is probably the best way of put it, and they've just come back to us as a customer. So it's great to have them back as a VERICUT customer again. That's probably been one of the successes of the last few months.
Yeah, for sure.
Brilliant.
I've always liked, as I've been involved in your user days, that we used to go to Williams F1, didn't we?
Yeah.
And
Those were the days.
Silverstone and
exactly. And I really enjoy those, because my passion has been motorsport over the years. But when I interview some of your customers who are there looking at the new update or updates within the software effectively, when you talk to them, they're very passionate about what they do, but they think, I spend a day here or maybe 2 days learning the new aspects within the software, because it just makes our life a lot easier for our business. And I think that's the best recommendation you can have from a customer, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we don't have many unhappy customers ever. In the 20 years that I've been around, there's probably less than you can count on one hand. Actual, customers saying, "I'm not happy. I don't want the software. Have it back." It's been so rare. It's a really big thing if that happens, because it's unheard of.
And I think when you talk about when we had the Force event at SECO, yet again, the amount of inquiries that you got on the back of that, just say, well, hold on a minute. So if I bought into Force, therefore I've got a production of this over X amount of years, I'm going to save that amount of money.
Yeah.
And I think it's just educating the marketplace that you've got to look long term rather than short term.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And your product is obviously evolving over the years
Of course,
with the change in machine tools.
It never stops.
Constantly,
It never stops. It's fluid.
Yeah.
It's
never
brilliant.
stops.
And just rounding this up, guys, it's been absolutely brilliant. I can't believe we're already on 33 minutes. I think we've covered quite a lot. But, in regards to education, how important is that to break down the barriers to entry in this kind of area of excellence?
In education, as in education of VERICUT products.
Yeah, education for people that have not used it. And
So for people who have not used it, it's pretty much a 3-day training class should be the most that they'll need to be pretty proficient with everything they want to do. If they have a CAM product and an interface to VERICUT from a CAM product, then that would normally drop to 2 days. And by then, the end of 2 days, they should be a proficient user.
And I think also when you look at the age of decision makers of what they run on their shop floor, I'm very respectful for this, but I think a machine tool is a machine tool. It's built well, it will last, you look after it. But the thing what really drives it is software, and you enhance that software.
Yes,
basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, without doubt.
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, it's been brilliant, guys. I mean, I weren't very familiar with CGTech before today, but I certainly am now, and I'm sure our listeners will be too. It's been an absolute pleasure. Many thanks for listening to the MTD podcast today. I hope it's been very educational. We would love to hear all of your thoughts. Don't hesitate to contact CGTech and VERICUT directly for any support or questions that you may have if you're not already using it. But by the sounds of it, you should definitely be using it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And until next time, the MTD podcast.
Thank Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on mtdcnc.com.